Okay, we're live. Let me give it a few seconds to catch up, just because it seems like it does that. Yeah. Oh, we're also a little hot on the mic. Hold on. Bring the record level down just a little bit. Hot. Hot mic, everybody. Oh, it's still hot. Jeez. Okay, well, we'll do that. We'll compensate with a little bit of audio. So hopefully the audio sounds good. Yeah, so today we're going to try to re-break, try to fix, try to make work that awful, horrible, very low-rated Harry and Meghan documentary series. The first 3 episodes came out. I watched them. It was very hard to sit through. Let me just pull up the ratings, because I think that's, it's easy to kick someone when they're down, but the average tomato rating is 46%, and I think it hasn't even reached a conclusion yet, and then the audience score is 12%, which means basically 1 in 10 people that took the time to watch any amount of it thought it actually I guess it's 1 in 8. 1 in 8 people decided after having watched any amount of it that it was a worthwhile endeavor. Yeah, so let's read some. It's not going to load comments apparently. Will let me see the score details now? Okay. How many? Does it say credit? It doesn't even. Everything's flickering. Okay, well, let's look at so 13 critic ratings. So most critics didn't even bother. A couple of British critics did, which is ironic considering so much of the documentary series is about the press, specifically the British press, and their relationship to the, I don't even know their last name, to the Duke and the Duchess, right? Is that what their titles are? Harry and Meghan? I don't know. His name is Harry Windsor. I don't know. I don't know anything about. I don't pay attention to the royal family. Yeah. So let's see here. First one, the new Statesman. Never heard of it. The telling of the story is so artful and lavish, and generally enticing that only afterwards do you wonder about what is not being said. The fact that some things definitely do not add up. Yeah, that's definitely the tone I've been hearing. I've been seeing video breakdowns of things that they've said, and then like receipts, like evidence of what they said being factually not correct. But hey, I'm not here to do that. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a reporter. I'm interested in the sort of the narrative version of what this is, and because I do think in almost every situation, you start with something and you can make it work. And I just think this is an example of some version of not allowing it to work. Let's see some more reviews. The Wall Street Journal, I've heard of them. A viewer has to be on board for the royal soap opera bus, not to be bored out by one's mind by Harry and Meghan. Yeah, that I agree with that. Considering Netflix really wants the world to watch, I definitely think the idea that you would make something regional, the idea that you would make something small, is fine. But if you're going to draw the circle of the audience of who is the audience, it's people who care about the royal family enough to watch a docuseries about it. Is that circle bigger than the circle drawn around who watches the Kardashians? I'd say the Kardashians, who get equally terrible ratings, tend to have a bigger audience. But I don't know. I don't work in that world. Let's see here. Positive. London Evening Standard gave it a positive review. I'm still peaking. Hold on. Go down a little bit. Okay, so the London Evening Standard said that it's because I'm shouting. Now, check. There we go. London Evening Standard said it is a thoroughly millennial tale which will irk older viewers in their preening of the lens, but appeal heartily to younger ones. Do young viewers care about the royals? I don't know. I'm not a young viewer, so I can't speak to that. I can speak as a millennial because apparently they're millennials too. I'm not even sure if that's true. They might be a little bit aged out, but as a millennial, I'm definitely gonna lean into the stereotypes that millennials don't care about antiquated hierarchies of power that have never benefited anybody but a very few select group of people. So I don't necessarily agree with the London Evening Standard's positive review, just based on stereotypes and assumptions. Intimate, self-aggrandizing, and wildly entertaining. Jesse Thompson, The Independent, UK. I didn't find it intimate. That's fine. Let's see, any other good ones? Hollywood Reporter, Harry and Meghan offers too little that feels fresh enough to merit the luxurious 6-episode sprawl for all but the most fervent royal watchers. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that point of view, definitely. There is little here that we did not already know, but it is nevertheless fascinating counterpoint to royal propaganda. Kudos to Harry's audacity at being unwilling to perpetuate a noxious paradigm. And that was worth a 3 out of 5, which is technically a positive review. Flick philosopher. Well, to be fair, Marianne wrote philosopher with an F, so I don't feel like I feel bad about tripping over that. I mean, sure, but I would argue if trading in a bad paradigm for a different paradigm, the idea you would hope would be that the new paradigm is better. So I'm definitely, I don't know. So okay, so let me try to talk about the show in earnest for a second. It's a docuseries, kinda. It's a docuseries in that it's about famous public figure people in Harry and Meghan who I believe are now living in Los Angeles. I'm not even sure. Canada. I don't know. It has to be Los Angeles, right? Because that's where she's from. Yeah, usually a documentary is trying to tell some kind of story. It's not a narrative in that we're hiring actors to say lines and we're making sets that are not real life. But there is still sort of a through line. There's a Western storytelling setup where there's the hero, which is usually the subject of the documentary, in enduring something or retrospectively looking at something in this case, which I do kind of feel some kind of way about because it's kind of the record scratch, how did I get here thing, which is not my style of writing. But yeah, so you have a hero and they're on a journey, they're going somewhere. And so a documentary is meant to still take you on some kind of journey, even if that is a journey of discovery, which I think is what they were trying to do here, because so much of this is them sitting on the couch, giving it to camera, and Meghan is definitely a lot more friendly to the camera than Harry is. Harry is a lot more tight-lipped, which I don't necessarily count against him, because as someone who doesn't like to be on camera, the irony is crazy, I know. This is why I'm not ready for prime time for the very same reason Harry isn't, which is don't like it, and body doesn't worky well enough to worky with it, kind of thing. But yeah, you're supposed to be, there's some sort of narrative story happening even in a documentary, and the best I can figure this one is, how did we get here? It's because everything is other than them sitting on the couch sort of giving it straight to camera now, everything else is like archival footage and or footage that they shot themselves, which is a lot of vertical phone stuff, which considering they're both press trained basically from birth, the vertical phone thing is a weird one. I might go into a rant about that at some point during this live stream, but it's just yeah. So I don't know, where are they going? Well, it does seem like at least the first 3 episodes, it's some version of, why are we so hated? Let's try to contextualize why people hate us to maybe they won't hate us so more. And then there's a much more insidious layer that definitely is from Harry's angle, which is that the British press, the British paparazzi, is the Antichrist and should be dismantled because it's the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of anybody. I'm being facetious, but I'm also that is kind of like his point of view, which is fine. I'm okay with the character's unique point of view. there's a bit of a falling off in that when you're already at the top, the idea of punching up doesn't really happen, and so unfortunately for Harry and to a lesser extent Meghan, they're always going to be punching down, and so whatever their complaints are not going to be fielded quite as thoroughly as somebody in less of a sort of a heightened position than them. And so, yes, I think for the sake of the fact that Harry's mother famously died and it broke the world's heart, more or less because of paparazzi, he is uniquely suited for that narrative. If anybody's going to tell that narrative correctly, Harry has an opportunity to, because he has such a unique, all-encompassing experience. I'm not so sure this show delivered on any of that in a meaningful way. It also, it's a little tricky in that they famously signed this $100 million Netflix DocuSeries deal, and so how is Netflix, and in some meaningful way, different than the press and paparazzi that Harry has been railing against his entire life? You see, and so I think it might have been worthwhile for the filmmakers to address that, to say, hey, then they sort of did. Their take was basically, everybody says everything about us. This is our opportunity to set the record straight. But then in the docuseries, Harry especially doesn't, because he doesn't like to talk to the camera. Meghan was born to be in front of camera. That's inherent and obvious. But you can tell that there's so much of the criticism is they're holding back what they tried to promise the viewers, or at least the trailer did, which was, you're gonna hear it from the horse's mouth, and that's not even remotely what happened. If anything, they were asking them questions, and Harry would occasionally answer, and Meghan would answer to the best of her press trained, within the sort of framework of how they're supposed to operate, answers. It's a mess. Anyway, so all that being said, let's try to repitch this. Let's try to rebuild this and make this something interesting. So here's a chart. Yeah, so this is gonna be a few things. If you've seen my live streams before, on the far right in purple, this is the sort of the pitch sheet that I used all the time, but especially when I was reading for agents, managers, production companies, film festivals, that kind of thing. This whole purple thing, that's basically what I was filling out when I was reading scripts. I think it lends to this quite well, but I also think so much of why this docuseries is broken is the main characters. The characters we're supposed to follow, and the journey that we're supposed to follow along with. They're unrefined, unfinished. They're not well understood enough, and very little over the course of the docuseries makes them better understood. A lot of that is, these are both public figures living in public life, and so we already kind of understood, like, we know what they are. But again, this series was sort of teasing the idea that, well, you've seen the tabloids, here's who they really are. And I was thinking Harry is going to be this, like, has a woodshed and carves boats, and Meghan practices Tai Chi with the Grand Master of whatever Tai Chi is in reference to. And there wasn't that. There was a little bit of that in that they both like doing outreach, and they both like doing, they like going to Africa and helping with the water and all those kind of efforts. But we didn't even really see any of that. So we saw a little bit of that, and we saw sort of a bit, I think in episode 2, where Harry really bonded with a guy in Africa when he went there when he was, I believe, 18 for a period of time. But, it really wasn't the experience of getting to know who they are so much as, here's who we are. You should take this at face value because this is what we're offering you. It seemed begrudged. It seemed like, it's mean-spirited. There's a mean-spiritedness to this, which is very interesting. So let me walk you through the chart. Let me just get rid of the whole thing. Let me also make sure that my stream is running, because otherwise this is all for naught, which happens. Cool. Okay, so it is running. Let me check on the health of the stream real quick, 'cause obviously the prawn just finds me in these streams. Okay, so yeah, so we'll go on the right side first because I think that's easier to explain, because this is just general sort of story stuff. So we have concept. So is the concept of what we're doing decent? Originality. How original is this idea? Commercial viability. Yeah, I mean, you can see why this got pitched. You can see why this got made. I mean, everybody wanted to do a series with this couple because they're right for TV. They are. Ironically, Harry is not, but that is something production learned. Commercial viability, cinematic potential, quality of lead roles, emotional resonance, thematic resonance, uniqueness and development of world, tone, X factor, creative stuff. This is basically what producers, caveat on a caveat on a caveat. This is what producers care about when they're considering an idea. Obviously, it was a layup. It was a swish for Harry and Meghan because they're some of the most famous people on Earth. They're one of the most controversial famous couple on Earth. So they were always going to have a show. They were never not going to have a show. The idea that they shouldn't have a show or that they're undeserving of a show is a completely different conversation, because in the world where money makes shows, they have a lot of reach to get a lot of money, a lot of funding, because of how famous they are and sort of the controversy and their story to begin with. The show was always going to get made. I want that to be absolutely clear. There was never not going to be a situation where the show wasn't going to get made. And I'll go through, and I think I can prove it on paper. Left side of the screen here, main characters, and so we need to know what's unique about them. We need to know their strengths, their weaknesses. The theme is just going to be a theme, and I'll put up what I believe the theme is as printed, which definitely needs a change. We also have their ultimate success, their ultimate failure, what their journey is, and then all the obstacles connected to the journey. And so this is all character building stuff. This isn't necessary, or this isn't unique to Harry and Meghan. This is just character work, because at the end of the day, narrative, documentary, slice of life, whatever you want to do, you have to have characters, because again, storytelling is about human emotions and the ability to empathize and understand the characters being portrayed through a human and an emotional experience. Ideally, especially narrative, the emotions of the characters will cause the characters to make choices which will drive the plot forward. This is not that, which is another sort of broken leg that this show has, because the entire thing is told basically in flashback. Actually, it's told in, ancillary footage that has been gathered and most definitely bought from Harry and Meghan in a lot of cases. Which leads me to believe, where did the 50-ish million for this 3 batch go? Was it all licensing their footage? Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't there. I've never produced something like this, but it just seems a little interesting that basically the only new footage in this entire show is them sitting on a couch and Meghan really trying to make you fall in love with the camera, and Harry basically trying to burn a hole in the back of the camera with his eyes. Anyway, so yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about the pitch of the idea first, because I think that'll be quick. Concept. What happened to this crazy couple that is so famous, and they're the couple that defected from the monarchy, blah blah blah. Concept. Yeah, it's one of those that was always going to get made. I go to 4 because it's not a brilliant concept. It's not something like Thor. He has the like pushing his body to the limit documentary. Zac Efron has the sort of travel documentary. Obi-Wan Kenobi had that road documentary where he did the long way around and the long way down, those kind of things. So those were superior concepts, but I still consider, just based on the fact that you're printing money if you're hiring Meghan and Harry for a documentary, I give that a 4. Originality. I mean, it's a lifestyle documentary, so in that case, it's not very high scoring, but again, it's Harry and Meghan, and nobody else is going to get Harry and Meghan, so again, that's at least a 4. Commercial viability. You say Harry and Meghan in the English-speaking world, and that refers to this couple, so yeah, that's easy peasy. Cinematic potential. Well, historically, it's Netflix, so very high cinematic potential. Weirdly enough, so much of this is, archival footage. So in the sense that it's going to be a beautiful show, it's trying its best, but you can only make sitting on a couch look so good, and the rest of it is archival footage. So cinematic potential, I'd give it a 3, but there's not really room for improvement based on the format of the show. Quality of lead roles, again, the 2 of the most famous characters of all time in our generation. Yeah, as long as they're not total jerks, foreshadowing, you're good. Emotional resonance, that's where I think we have a problem in the actual show. But as the pitch goes, emotional resonance, why did they leave the Commonwealth? Why did they leave the monarchy? There's something there. There's a race aspect to it there. There's a times are changing aspect to it there. There's a fact that the monarchy is weird in its own way aspect to it there. So emotional resonance, I'd say at least a 4. But again, the show itself, I feel like, is hampered based on the how much creative control whoever was making decisions. And I have a feeling it was Harry and Meghan, honestly. Thematic resonance. Well, that's interesting because these are people who have more than 99.99999% of the planet have benefited from a system of wealth and accruing wealth and accruing power that nobody else has access to. There are billionaires that are jealous of the royal family. Thematic resonance. It's a tricky sell. It's a tricky sell. I think part of that is they really wanted to lean on the idea that Meghan is the every woman, because she 100% is. She's kind of like the perfect every woman, which actually has a weird parallel to Princess Diana herself, if you know anything about that. But thematic resonance, I'm giving it a generous 3, just because you're really banking on the idea that people still care about the royals, and if you put a mic in front of somebody on the street, they might say yes. But if you asked them to name any royals, they might be able to say Harry and William. Honestly, I think before high school, I don't know if I could have named any of the royals except for the Queen. R.I.P. Uniqueness and development of world. This is what is so interesting about this couple. Like who they are is. They're in a bygone society in 2022. So uniqueness and development world. Yeah, if it's basically you're getting the inside scoop on something that nobody has been allowed to see for, they're saying, 1,000 years, but it's really where you count it. So I'd say uniqueness, development of world, slam dunk. Tone, yikes. I think in selling this, nobody really understood what the tone was going to be. The final product of this, the tone is wanting. It's just not good. It's I'm going to give the tone a 2 because they attempted at a tone, but it's not completely incomprehensible. It's not something your weird cousin made in his basement that just is completely incomprehensible, even if it was made with the best intentions. There is professionalism and an attempt at telling a story here, but there's a lot going on in tone. And the X Factor, again, they're a 5 out of 5 because they are the most likable royal couple in the modern era, unless you count the other couple whose names are escaping me, William and Meghan Markle. I got it. Nailed it. Couldn't name their kids though. I don't live in the Commonwealth. So honestly, very solid pitch. Tone is a little bit wanting. Thematic resonance is going to be a real thing you're going to have to focus on, because how does it not come off as whiny and entitled and I went from this private school to this private life as a public figure, and I've never once had a moment where I went, oh my God, where my next meal is going to be, or blah, blah, blah. So that's going to be interesting. It definitely helps that he is the son of Princess Di, probably the most beloved princess of international memory. So it's interesting. And then cinematic potential, a missed opportunity in that it seems like very, very much they didn't want to be filmed, and or I would say Harry doesn't want to be filmed, because that's definitely how they pitched it, as Harry has hated cameras since birth. So that's gonna be tough, but that's not a deal breaker. Yeah, so very high score. I think that's an average at least 4.5, maybe like a 4.2. So, you know, pretty solid. Let's talk about let's talk about theme, actually. Let's talk about theme. So theme is tricky because each episode kind of focuses on its own thing. I believe the first episode is just who we are and how did we get together. And there was a lot of the first time I saw him, blah, blah, blah. This is an anecdote about that time that we met, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So it's the first episode is how did we get to where we are, or how did we meet? Second episode, I believe, is the one where it leans really hard on the paparazzi and the press of it all. And Harry's very upfront about how he just loathes press, loathes it, and especially the paparazzi, but loathes it. And you have moments where Meghan is obviously uncomfortable because she's not used to the level of fame that he has lived. And so there's something really interesting there. You know, the storyline of a person being born into being on camera at all times. It's sort of an interesting, sort of very British take on the child actor of it all. Very interesting. But what was actually given to us was so thin and so, you know, surface level that I don't think there was I don't know. And the third episode was very much about the wedding, everything leading up to the wedding, the fact that her dad ended up not going to the wedding, and whether or not he took money for whatever. Yeah, that whole thing. So what is the theme of the show? I don't know. Maybe it's who are we, or I think there's a definite argument to be made that it's about the press / paparazzi are the Antichrist. We'll do 2. So I think they were actually earnestly trying to go to who we really are. So that's 1. Put it right there. But the other one is very, very much the paparazzi is the worst thing to ever happen to anyone in the entire world. What a point of view. Paparazzi bad. I'm not saying paparazzi are without sin. I think there's a real strong argument to be made that the paparazzi are the reason Princess Diana is no longer with us. But I wasn't there. I was like 4. So, yeah. But you can tell, you know, I think most movies, the first sign of problems, most TV shows' first sign of struggle is if the theme is unclear. And I think it's really fair to say that the theme, we're not sure what the theme is. So that, you know, it falls at the feet of the director, it falls at the feet of the producers, but what are we doing here, guys? Yeah, so let's keep going on. So I think going down this road would be interesting. The ultimate success is to be understood, maybe. I don't know. If it's paparazzi bad, it's all paparazzi go to jail and Prince Harry gets to, you know, wear flip-flops on a public beach and people don't bully him. Man, that was harsh. Let me walk that back. If the ultimate success in the context of paparazzi bad is paparazzi go away, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I find TMZ. I find TMZ to be a pretty wholly unpleasant place. I've encountered and worked with people who have worked with TMZ on you know, from the TMZ side and from the working with TMZ side, and it's gross. I mean, you know, I still hold child actors and how they're treated just societally to be the worst thing I've ever come across in Hollywood. But, you know, TMZ and the paparazzi of it all is a close second. So the ultimate success, we'll just ignore paparazzi bad because I just think that's a non-starter. But, you know, paparazzi go away. Who we really are. Ultimate success, now you know, now you understand. messed up the card. Try again. We'll just do understood. Because it does seem very much like this show is Meghan specifically, but Harry also being like, you don't understand, and if you understood, maybe you could treat us like human beings, which is that's real. And that's kind of the point of every documentary ever, is understanding the focus of what the documentary is about, which tends to be a group that is inherently not understood. I'm all about it. Ultimate failure is the opposite. It backfires. And in the case of what they're doing, make it worse, I guess. Which I think that's real. I think that's a real risk, because they're already a very embattled couple, and so the idea that there is a real risk of making it worse, and so I get it. They had $100 million to not make it worse, and so it's hard for me to empathize on a human level of what they're doing, but I am legitimately trying to treat this as these are characters and not the people we know, because again, my experience with the royal family and this couple is not everybody else's experience, which is the big trap, because everybody has an experience with them somehow if they're in the English speaking world. The journey. Well, the journey as it stands is, how did we get to here, which is the teen comedy record scratch. Oh my God, my hand's in the cookie jar. I just got thrown in jail. I'm naked in a pool. How did I get to here? Here's the rest of the film. I said that with a lot of contempt, because I just don't like that as a storytelling device, but that is what we're presented, because it really is just couch show, archival footage. Couch show, archival footage. Tell us about your wedding. I'm talking on the couch about my wedding. Cut to archival footage of her in that giant processional down whatever that square is, that whole thing. So how did we get here? And the ironic thing is, honestly, if it wasn't just called Harry and Meghan, and it was called Harry and Meghan, How Did We Get Here, or How Did We Get Here, the Harry and Meghan story, I think that's interesting, because I think that offers a measure of self-awareness that it doesn't seem to be taking place in the actual show. On SNL, the thing they tell the guests every single time, whether or not they're actors, whether or not they're political figures, is make fun of yourself, because then the audience is on your side. If you can prove you have a sense of humor and you don't take yourself clinically seriously, people will buy in, because people want to like you. Nobody has ever gone into a movie going, I hope this sucks. Not in earnest. People who love movies, and it's the when it goes bad, that's when it gets upsetting. That's when it gets disappointing. Really, it's disappointing. And so, yeah, Harry, how did we get here? The Harry and Meghan story, I think is solid, and it's saying, hey, we're not perfect. You're going to see some warts. You're going to see some flaws. You're going to see some wearing, Nazi uniforms at parties. But at the end of the day, we're people. We're going to make mistakes. Hopefully you can understand that, because nobody's perfect. Here's our story. But instead, it's Harry and Meghan. Okay, sure. That requires a context of the person reading that title or seeing that title to go, who are they to me? For me, it's a ginger and a California girl. That's what it is to me. So. Okay, obstacles. I think we might have to go back to, because that's going to deal with the strengths and weaknesses. But you can see that this show is just it's unfinished. It's not. There's cracks in what they're doing, and I really do. Having no connection to it, I'm convinced it's because Harry and or somebody on Harry's team had a level of narrative control over this. They probably the deal they signed was they get final cut. They get final looks. And so that maybe they already actually wrote and shot and edited a proper, well constructed docuseries, and Harry Death by a Thousand Cuts it, or somebody in Harry's corner, somebody looking out for Harry, Death by a Thousand Cuts it, because you're at the end of the day, whatever you're making, if you're not the one with the money to make it, you're at the mercy of the money. And so I could very much see that because of their clout that they got Final Cut and they recut it. So I don't know though. This is all guessing. It's all total guessing. I'm very nose itchy. Before we do obstacles, because I think this whole middle column just needs to be completely retooled. Yeah. So okay. So let's work on character. Let's jump around a little bit. Let's see what we can do with character, since that's somewhere we can go. Uniqueness. Yes. So let's see here. Let me just spitball here. Uniqueness. Well, yeah. I mean, let's just do well. Yeah. I think that answers that. Yeah, they're unique. They're very unique. It's like doing a documentary about Kanye, or Ye, whatever he goes by these days. Yeah, they're unique. That's not a problem. The situation they're in is unique. So unique situation. And everybody has a narrative about them already. So there's sort of the golden ticket for selling shows and movies, which is there's brand awareness. We'll just call it that. That's really cynical, but that is what it is. If she was just Meghan nobody and he was just Harry nobody, and they weren't who they were, they would not have this show. I think that's very fair to say. I'm not saying they don't deserve the show. I'm just saying that their brand awareness was such that they got to be in the position that they're in. Strengths. Meghan is very likable. It helps that she's a really unique person who seems to be just awesome and good at stuff. And she is sort of the surrogate for the every woman or the every man, especially when it comes to the royals, which is the whole thing. She was, a lot of people, even in the DocuSeries, they talk about, she could be the face of how the royal family changes. Is the royal family going to change based on watching the last 50 years of them being in front of the press? It's a tough ask, but to be fair, it's Queen Elizabeth, right? That's how good I am. Queen Elizabeth, based on at least watching The Crown, made it very clear to me that she understood the press and she understood being on TV and sort of the John F. Kennedy of it all. Have your debates on TV because the world watches TV. Regular people that may have a compounded effect on what your career is, what your life is going to be. They watch TV because TV is accessible to them, just like radio, just like movies now, just like Netflix now. So that's the Meghan of it all. Weakness. Harry's contempt for all things media. Let's be real. I think, I'm going to put that. And he has a real argument there. Again, he has the ultimate card there in that Princess Di. So if anybody is able to tell this story, it's him, because he is the son of Princess Di. He is the younger son of Princess Di. He spent the least amount of time with her, but he grew up a royal in the 20 to 21st century. He has a great angle, but for what we're trying to do, he has contempt for media, but he's on media. You see where that's if you're gonna make it about the thing, don't make him use the thing. If it's about being the best pogo champion in the world, and then the person shows up and goes, Yeah, no, I don't know how to, I don't know how to pogo, and okay, well then you're gonna learn how to pogo. No, the opposite. I'm not gonna do any pogoing. I understand this documentary is about being the best pogo champ in the world, but you know, it's me. But I'm not gonna ever pogo. What are we doing here? So, other strengths. Well, they're, you know, they seem to be a strong couple. Does that make for an interesting story? I want to expound upon that, but I also can't write and talk at the same time, apparently. I'm one of those. Let's be, you know, cards on the table. The couple that goes, we never fight. We're perfect. The moment we saw each other, we were in love. That whole thing. I take it for face value. You know, half of marriages end in divorce. Meghan herself has been divorced already, something that gets very, very briefly addressed in one sentence, I feel. So when I see the couple that is aggressively happy, it's not my experience. I believe that in 8 billion people, which means 4 billion couples, if you're going to do bad math, that has happened once for sure. But you know, it seems to be the wisdom of the crowd is marriage is hard, being a couple is hard. You know, the nuances become a thing, and it's really how you handle the strife in your own relationships is really going to define the quality of the relationship. They're just straight up giving us the we're great at being a couple, we just hate the press and the paparazzi and being famous. Okay, you know, that's an opportunity to, you know, really tell an interesting story, because again, we know who they are. So where's the interior life? So I'm gonna add a weakness. I didn't mean to be going back and forth, strength, weakness, but interior lives. But honestly, I don't know anything about them as a couple other than he didn't like the idea of being in a relationship with anybody because the press chases them away, because it's too hard to be in a relationship with him. Boy, that seems like a real red flag cop out if I'm just saying it out loud, but for the sake of what we're doing, they seem cool. It could just be he's the most ineligible bachelor in the modern time. That maybe that's possible. So other strengths. I don't know, because we don't know anything about. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is the royal family especially does such a comprehensive job of making sure nobody really you know, spends a personal moment, because the whole, I mean, especially now. Okay, it's tangent time. If you're an actor, maybe not a movie star, but an actor, I mean, there's other examples, like Taylor Swift has an absolutely like unbreakable brand that is across all social media. It is what it is. But if you're an actor, like maybe you're on a basic cable or a deep cable show, but it keeps coming back and you're well liked, you're going to have a social media presence. You're going to have a social media following. And one of those things is TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, especially Instagram Reels, YouTube possibly, although there's been very clear examples of not wanting that not going well. Brie Larson as an example of just not understanding the character she was putting out there. I feel like was what was so bitter tasting about her YouTube presence. Again, I only watched that one video and was like, okay, well, there's nothing here for me. But yes, unless you're Tom Cruise, unless you're, you know, the most famous person on earth, most working actors, it's in their benefit to have a social media presence. It's in their benefit to be in their trailer on their phone, being like, hey, this is me in my trailer. I'm up in Toronto. I'm working. It's so great to see you guys. Again, it's not me. I would never do that. It's not my world. But I'm also not trying to trade on my ability to act or my ability to be good looking, because I suck at both of those. You know, call a spade a spade. But I get that, especially women in the entertainment industry, they have a public persona that they're putting out there that is the real persona. which I actually, okay, so I want to double down on this tangent now. A lot of this show has the vertical format of them doing stuff, and like Meghan, like trying not to cry as she's holding her phone vertically. And it's doing two things. Well, first of all, it's very much the Hollywood actress trying to connect with her people kind of thing, which I'm not knocking. Again, it's not for me, I'm not knocking. But the other thing is, it kind of smacks of artificiality because we know who they are. We know that this is not their thing. So if a regular person TikToks themselves doing something, that's them being real. That's a moment of earnesty, as far as they hit record. Like you can contextualize something into not being earnest quite easily, but on the face of it, a person working at Domino's TikToking themselves doing something in the Domino's break room, that's as earnest as you can get, because that's putting themselves out there, and that they have no control over it. They're literally just holding a camera. That's it. Whereas the more curated it gets, the more there's a distance between earnesty and what they're actually doing. So the vertical phone for these two famous royals, I get that it's meant to be human. It's meant to be earnest. It's meant to be raw. But we know why they're doing it. It's not the same. Like Casey Neistat, obviously very high functioning, like filmmaking in general, but there's an earnesty there. He's saying what he thinks. He's saying what he means. He knows he's talking to a camera, and by extension, people. The Meghan and Harry, it's different. They know that this isn't going to be their only take that they're going to use. Possibly, the trust has been broken. I don't necessarily think it's their fault that the trust has been broken, but the trust has been broken, and it seems like every time there's a news article about them, if trust has been reestablished, the trust gets further broken. And so, that's the nature of living in the public eye, I suppose. But yeah, maybe I'll add that to a weakness. Whoops, dropped my pen. No trust. It'd be different if they were doing a docuseries on how to live in the public eye. I think that would be very interesting, because then I think Harry would have a really good point of view, a really good authoritative point of view of someone who doesn't want to be in the public eye. Hey, this is me. I was born into this. I never had a choice. My mom died in a really tragic, really dark way that has affected me and everyone in my life in a really profound way. Therefore, here's how I go about my life in order to mitigate the obstacles that are in front of me, based on the fact that I'm a public figure being constantly harassed and pursued by paparazzi. I think an interesting story is there, for sure. Meghan, I think, has a really interesting take. Here's what it's like to be a deep cable actress working in Toronto who accidentally falls in love with and marries one of the most famous royals in the modern era, and what that lifestyle change is like, which is they started to do a little bit, episode 1 and episode 3 a little bit. But again, then they turned back to Harry's absolute contempt for the paparazzi. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the wheels are turning, because again, you can do a documentary about an expert, like you can do a documentary about a glass blower. This is how this guy, since he's been carrying the tradition for 20 generations, this is how he blows glass. That's a slice of life. That's interesting. And so I think there is something there to how do you, as one of the most famous royal English speakers alive today, in your I guess 40s now, late 30s, early 40s, how do you go about your life in a regular way? I think that would be an interesting thing. That's not what they showed us, though. That's really not. They showed us a car from garage to garage. They literally said that, and then they talked about how the press has been a problem for their entire lives. I'd even want to just see a day in the life, honestly. I find that incredibly stressful. Linus from Linus Tech Tips did a day in the life a while back, where they just did a 24 hours of his life and sort of how his company works in 24 hours, because they knock out like 11 or 12 videos a week, 15 videos a week, and just what that schedule looks like. SNL, for the same reason, actually, there was that 6 days to air or whatever. Actually, that was South Park, but SNL did one too. SNL did, what a SNL week looks like. South Park did 6 days to air, what that looks like. I think it'd be really interesting to see what their actual life looks like, because I think it would give us context that the idea of being alone in a room, the idea of being themselves it's not just Meghan and Harry telling us it's hard and there's no times alone. We actually see it, and we see them, how they interact, how they're emotionally, comprehending, how they're emotionally digesting what's happening to them at all times. And I don't see it. And so I think the first episode should have been a day in the life. This is today. We're going to do this. We're going to speak of this. We're going to do this, and then we're done with this. I think that'd be interesting, because I think that humanizes them. I think that makes them, you realize that you don't want this life, that they're committed and they're contractually obligated to a bunch of stuff that regular people don't have to deal with because they're so freaking famous. Yeah. Let me look at see if there's spam anywhere. There's not. Okay. So more strengths. They have an absolutely unique point of view. I think that's a perfect strength, which is really what the show is. It's supposed to be their unique point of view. Ironically, what they did was they didn't show us their unique point of view. They showed us the archives. They showed us the press point of view of them. Maybe that's the problem, as I'm saying it out loud. Maybe it's not just that we don't have closeness, it's that we don't have their point of view, because all they've given us is archival footage. So it's not their point of view. They could even dip into the YouTube thing of reactions. You could do a thing where you could do, X amount of footage of like maybe Harry and Meghan at some sort of public event. They did this a little bit about the wedding, but I think they could do it for like just a speech, like a Tuesday for them, where they're having to do a speech, and you do like 15 minutes and you sit down and have them talk about, well, this is what happened in this. I think that's incredibly useful. We went down. Do we go back up? We'll find out, I suppose. Anyway, so I think it'd be really interesting to have them, if they really wanted to be real, if they really wanted to be, hey, we're just like you, which obviously they're not. They're inherently not, and that's what the show is. But if they wanted to do a, hey, we're just like you, I think it would be really beneficial for them to sit down and have some very well understood, very well broadcast moment of 10 minutes, 15 minutes or whatever, and have them sit on the couch and go, this is what happened in that moment. This is why I said this. This is what happened in this moment. This is the context of this, and walk us through how they had to navigate something that only they had access to because they're who they are. I think that's what we're missing. And so I'm going to write that down. I'm just going to write down the reactions speech. I'm going to put that over here. I'm going to put that. I'll just put that down here somewhere. Maybe down here. Reactions. Obstacles. I mean, the way it stands, the biggest obstacle for Harry is the paparazzi and the press in general. But that's weird. I mean, call a spade a spade. An obstacle is let me just make sure I'm still online. This is still going. Yeah, okay. The obstacle for them is a normal life. We'll do air quotes. And the attached obstacle to that is the fact that, so we'll do this. And the attached obstacle to the fact is that on the face of it, because they're so rich, because they have so much access, because they're who they are, without any context, anybody, anywhere would say, hey, I would rather have that life. I'd rather go through the crap that they go through because I'd be super rich, I'd be super famous, people would treat me differently, and most importantly for 99.999 continued percent of the world is I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. And so that's what you're cutting against. That's the normal life / trade me of it all. Because in the same way that they have a completely unique experience, it's a tough sell. It's a tough sell for people who are making soup out of the roots in their backyards, and they're hoping that the roots haven't been, absorbing all the toxins of the distillery down the street that's been dumping it into the, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's just I guess there's a layer of that kind of person's obviously not going to watch Netflix, so it's a different kind of person that watches Netflix, but the trade me of it all is the big obstacle for them, because any girl, you know, obviously priorities change, society's evolved a little bit, but I feel like at least when I was 6 years old, there was a reasonable amount of girls that I knew who were like, when I grow up, I want to be a princess. The Princess Diaries had just came out. Like, it was a whole thing. So the idea that they're saying you don't want this, we need more context. We just do. Other obstacles. Harry won't open up. That's really gross. And I want to talk about why. So reality shows basically don't even bother with this. But there was a season of Big Brother a couple seasons ago where the really creepy guy, who we found out later was drying out, was like in detox while he went on the show, and he was just kind of like a jerk, but he was really not good for TV. Like, he didn't work. He does what my face does on camera, which is to say it stops working. And it was sort of misinterpreted, his behavior, his sort of like weird hostility, as he just doesn't want to be on camera, whereas it turns out that was just an aspect of what was going on. He was also, without telling anybody, trying to get sober just by being there, which is weird and probably would have got him disqualified from the show to begin with, because that's so dangerous. That's how you end up in a coma. But also, he had really bad ideas and really bad attitudes, which a little bit got addressed by the end of the show. But it was all because there was so much chaos around him, because he was already just not ready for TV, that it was all sort of written off as just his way, when in reality, these were really clear, like, definable sort of personality issues that made for a much more toxic thing than it's just who he is. Like, it was gross. In the same way, we don't really know who Harry is, and that's because he won't open up. For press training reasons, that's a baller move, because then you don't get to know. But when you're given $100 million DocuSeries about who we are, there's a reasonable expectation that there's a little bit more open up than what happened. Obviously, if they open up, if you find out that Harry's a monster, I can see why he wouldn't want to do that. But the show is built around Harry opening up. This is going to be our story. And so if he's not going to open up, then what are we all doing here, I guess, is the problem. Yeah. Let me check on the stream some more. So, okay. Let's see if there's any other obstacles. Because, man, it's always going to be their obstacle is not money. And so that immediately makes them inherently less approachable, inherently less understood than a regular person, because for most people in life, money is the ultimate obstacle. But for them, and for Harry especially, it's if anything, it's been a burden, and that's just not inherently understandable. And so there's narrative tricks you can do to get around those kind of impossibilities. That's why we have anti-heroes in television. We have Dexter and we have Walter White. As long as you understand their context, as long as you understand what they're about, you can sort of get into the headspace of understanding how they think about stuff, and that humanizes them. That makes them better understood. And then I'm a serial killer, I'm gonna be the ultimate gangster in my meth game, that makes it work. The Sopranos, for instance. But if you don't have any of that, if you just have woe is me and people don't understand me, and that's every beat, you just have a person who most people would just be like, well, you're rich and your life is awesome, so I have no sympathy for you. Like, you blew it. Like, somehow you failed to make it work for yourself. And if given the opportunity, I, as not that person, would go in and just crush it. So yeah, it's why isn't that CEO of like Whole Foods or something just give away all of his money, and he wrote in a letter that it wasn't Whole Foods, I forget what it was, but he said that like money is a curse, it's like, sure, that's been a through line since the New Testament, since you know, the Jesus walked the earth or whatever. Money is a curse. But if you don't have it, not having money is such a worse curse. It just is. You know, if you don't have access to clean drinking water, it's worse. If you live in a food desert, that is worse. Like, that's objectively worse. So I'm sure it's inconvenient for you to have to take three armored cars going where you're going. That's definitely inconvenient, and that's not a normal life. I don't think anybody's saying that's a normal life, but that is still better than, you know, having to beg for food on the side of the highway, because otherwise you will die of starvation. Yeah. So other obstacles. It's the why. It's the why are we telling the story? Oh, it's going to be incomprehensible, but that's fine. Why are we telling the story? And I think the simple answer is because you don't know who we really are. This is who we really are. The problem is this is who we are has not been there's not been granted. They've not been given that permission. Harry especially just seems to just straight up no. So, okay, so I think that's as far as we can get. Let's just see if we can. I think it's obvious what the problem is, and it's that we don't know anything new about them, and therefore, by not knowing anything new about them, we have our own preconceived stuff. Plus, we have stuff that they're saying is proof that their life is some kind of way, but we're seeing it as stuff we've already seen. We're seeing it as archival footage. And so it's not new. There's no context. There's no Harry going, well, in that moment, the reason I said that word is because this is about this. The reason I did this is because about this. They had a real opportunity for him when they spent 90 seconds on the fact that he wore a swastika to a Halloween party one time. Or was it a Halloween party? I don't know. And there's an opportunity there for him to be like, this is what I thought. Everybody at the group thought it was funny because, you know, that's the kind of people we are. We grew up in this kind of world. But then when somebody actually called me on it and explained it to me, then that kind of thing. And he said he did the thing that immediately makes people turn off. And he goes, I went to Germany and talked to this person, a Holocaust survivor. I went to here and I talked to this person. That's great that you did that. Honestly, that's great that you did that. It's kind of weird that you had access to do that, let's be honest. But you are this person, so that is probably the stakes match the what you had to do. But you didn't say what you learned. You didn't say what you changed. You didn't go, oh my God, I was so wrong. I assumed wearing a swastika didn't mean anything anymore. And now that I know that people get physically sick when they see it, even though not people I know, that's a problem. And it's a reference to the symbol of a bygone era where your race indicated your social status. Like, you know, an entire genocide took place, and I'm wearing the symbol of that on my arm. Like, he didn't explain any of that. He just said, I met with this person. I met with this person. We had good talks. What did you learn? Did you learn anything? Because it kind of the way it's presented, it kind of seems like you didn't learn anything. And so the documentary, you need somebody to learn something. You need a character to even the best part about a story, the best part about a narrative or documentary is have the character fail. The main character fails, and we feel that, we understand what failure is. We sit in the failure, but then based on what they've learned or based on their ability to adapt to whatever they're doing, then they try again, and then they succeed given the new context, given the new tools, given the new way of working that they would have only been able to learn based on the process that this story has taken them through. And then they succeed, and that's a really well understood, that's a really well appreciated success that we can all sort of emotionally attach ourselves to. None of that is happening here. So I don't know. Another good question is there in all the footage that we've seen an actual, in this case, 3-episode or 6-episode series, in the footage that we've been presented, is there a meaningful, usable, emotionally resonant, emotionally impactful, satisfying story? Usually I say yes. When I did Don't Worry Darling, I think the answer is obviously yes. They had to throw out quite a bit, especially in the middle, but yes, all the ingredients are there. In this case, I'm saying no. I'm saying because Harry doesn't want to, like, the only thing he seems to have any sort of care about outside of Meghan herself is the fact that he hates the paparazzi. There's nothing there. There's no journey there. There's no paparazzi reform movement. There's no trying to make a deal with paparazzi, admitting that his best friend grew up to be a paparazzo. Like, there's none of that. I just lost my place. Let's see. There's none of that. Oh man, I just straight up lost my brain. All right, let me think for a second. So I don't know what it was. I don't know where I was going with that now. Oh yeah, and the other thing is, most of the footage we see is footage that does not increase our understanding of what's happening. We see the couch stuff that was shot for the documentary series that is just them talking. And it's not offering new information. It's not offering new insights. It's not offering much. It's basically them just saying, how did you feel about this? I felt this way about this. I think the solution to that is what I was going back to, where, like Corridor Crew, for instance, VFX artists react to. I think they really could have had a real opportunity there where they reacted to some great moment and Meghan being like, more than just, because she does this in every single of their stock footage things. She goes, I was so scared. I didn't know how to act. Yeah, but you don't see it in real time. You don't see her go, I put my hand in my pocket because my hand was shaking. You don't see him go, I put my arm on her shoulder because I realized that she was going to step forward and that was going to be a violation of policy. And so I held her there because I knew I've forgotten to tell her that. Like those details that actually make you become a person, we don't have any of that. The other thing is, other than the couch stuff, the rest of it is footage we've already seen, footage you can find on YouTube. There's a little bit of their vertical screen format that again comes off as either somewhere between fake and just why obviously somebody told you, hey, do a vertical screen and act like you're sad. Like, it's not there. It doesn't inherently feel real. Yeah. So it's authenticity, but it's also, is there enough footage in this show to make a show? No, because apparently the show spent all their money on Meghan and Harry and then had to use basically stock footage, archival footage. The whole thing was never before seen stuff, but I don't know what they're talking about, because if it's that phone stuff, then why even put that in? Because it doesn't change anything. I don't know. Yeah. So is the second 3 episodes going to be any good? Come on. Come on. It's one of those super pitches. It's one of those pitches where we're going to make a documentary about the royal couple that left the monarchy. It's free money. It's free money because it's by definition a unique idea. But unfortunately, you actually still have to deliver on the idea. And in the case of narrative, that means the writing has to work, the acting has to work, the directing has to work. In documentary, you just have to have material and compelling characters and the ability to sympathize and empathize with the characters and where their journey is going. Well, first of all, there's no journey here because they're just hanging out in, I think, California. And second of all, it's all just like, this is how we met. This is kind of like, it's all pre-roll. It's all, stuff that in most narrative screenplays takes place in Act 1 and usually gets cut because it's not interesting and it doesn't advance the plot. Yeah, so fix it. Harry either needs to be more open and more. There's ways to. When people are stuck on camera, when people don't like to interact with the camera, there's ways to get it to work. The best way to do it is just to have them doing something. Have him cooking. Have him taking the dogs out, just being in their element, because then they forget about the camera and it's much more about the task at hand. Meghan, it's not a problem because Meghan is an actor, and Meghan, again, was born right for camera. That's not an issue. But yeah, we need Harry to be a more, we need opportunities to prove that he's a human. That's really what it is. Meghan's fine, other than the fact that you can definitely tell that, especially when they're sitting on the couch, she is saying stuff with his permission somehow. Like, nothing she said was without his permission. The bad argument, he's a controlling husband. Better argument, this is how he was trained as a royal, and she has to get on board because that's the rules. I totally buy that. That's a more interesting story in itself. What if this was, again, I think the best version of this is Harry's tell-all being like, this is what it's like to be super famous and a royal now, and this is the things you have to do over the course of the day, over the course of the work week, in order to live your life, and it sucks, but it's the only life I've known. I think that's a much more interesting story. Instead, we've got sort of couch show and stock footage, and yeah. All right, so did we learn anything? Did we get by? I'm still a big believer that any idea can be massaged into something, but there's certain circumstances, like if the idea is inherently bad or if it's inherently low concept, it's going to be a tough sell. This show is not a tough sell, obviously, because it's Harry and Meghan, so it was already a slam dunk. If we look at the purple stuff, it's good, but at the end of the day, you still have to relay a story. You still have to have something going on. And if it's just stock footage, that's not a story. That's a slideshow. That you get what I'm saying? I don't know. I'd be really curious as to see where all the money went, because it seems like a lot of it went to licensing footage, but that can't have been $50 million worth of licensing footage. It has to have gone to Harry and Meghan themselves. Fake numbers of the 3 episodes. Is that $1 million worth of licensed footage? Like, is that even possible to get to that level of licensed footage? I honestly don't know. So I think they got paid to hang out on the couch, which, it's a heck of a deal. It's an awesome deal. I can't think of a single person, living or dead, that would pass up that deal. But as far as making a product, as far as delivering on a quality story that people can understand, no. And if the goal was who we really are, again, pointing back to the theme here, the goal was who we really are, I don't know anything more about them than I started with. And I definitely, if anything, empathize with them less than what I started with. And so that's gone against what they're trying to accomplish. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go take a shower now, because I never want to have to think about this stuff ever again, because I find it gross. Yeah. So I did my best to not put my own stuff, put my own opinion, put my own reaction to the footage onto the board. But where does the art end and the artist begin? There it is. We can call it a day. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and catch you next time.